friends. In integrated homeopathy, we have already presented few lacs like lac equinum, lac leo, lac asinum, and lac felinum, along with pellet group remedies. So taking that ahead, today we are going to present one holy lac, that is Lac Defloratum. It was used on the basis of Materia Medica image. It's an old lac remedy. So Materia Medica is given in many source books. But what we are going to present here is the theme or mental picture, detailed mental picture through two successfully treated cases by Dr. Shobha Shah and Dr. Kushala. Fortunately, both the cases are different and both the cases belong to different age groups. So it gives a holistic picture of Lac Defloratum. So let's hear it from them. I invite Dr. Shobha first, and then Kushala will be presenting her case. Dr. Shobha, you can start.
Thank you, Anita. So, hello friends. Let me directly go to the case. So this is a case of a 21-year-old girl, and she came to me with a complaint of severe headaches. And she used to get these headaches almost every day since last, say, 3 to 4 years. And along with it, she was getting sleeplessness, bloating of abdomen, gas, and acidity. And whatever she would eat, the way she described is, doctor, if I eat anything and everything, I get this bloating of abdomen. So even if I eat just the plain chai and paratha also, like I get this bloating of abdomen. She also used to get the recurrent allergic rhinitis, and she really had difficulty in lacking the confidence, and she was finding it very difficult to, in taking the decisions. So she wanted to do some courses of some art and craft, and she wanted to do some work which would pay her something, and she wanted to help her mother by earning some money, but it was getting very difficult for her because of her lack of confidence and indecisiveness, so which she was not able to do. So when she said, she's getting this migraine type of headaches almost which was there since lasting for last, say, 4 5 years. And again, also the sleeplessness, it made me very this thing, कि अरे मतलब ऐसा तो क्या हो गया कि इतने टाइम से ये complaints चालू है. So there has to be some stressful event into the life. So I tried to understand from her. Initially, what had happened is that she was a bit reluctant to talk about that. She did not for first 2 3 months, and after that I made her sit. I explained her what was the need, to understand her, to prescribe her and to help her, like, that we need the details about what has happened and what is the stress that you are passing through. So that was the time. Then she, by that time, she had also formed a good rapport with me. So then she felt little confident enough and she could share with me. So what she described was ki, like, she was abused by physically, mentally, and verbally by her neighbor couple who wanted to, that neighbor lady, she wanted to plot against her own husband. So she used this patient as a medium to, meaning against her husband. So when this lady, the neighbor lady, she approached this patient was like, quite shocked that with her demand and with her whatever she said. So the patient was quite shocked and she felt that, what are you talking? And she refused this lady many a times. But, like, the lady was continuously insisting her. So one fine day it happened that this patient of ours, she, like, gave in to her demand. And she said, ki, doctor, it was the biggest mistake of my life that, I gave in on that first day. And later on, she understood that it was the master plan of this lady, the neighbor lady, to blackmail her husband. So what happened is ki, this lady, like, she used to order her, and she used to, what she would call this patient. The patient was, the event has happened around 3 4 years ago. So that time patient was around 17-year-old, and that time patient was going into the college and the classes. So this lady, neighbor lady, she would call her up, and the patient used to be in the middle of her college, in the middle of her classes. And if the patient doesn't pick up the phone, or the lady, she would message her, and if the patient doesn't reply to her immediately, then whenever like she would pick up the phone or she will try to call her back, so that lady used to, like literally usko gaaliyan deti thi कि why you didn't pick up my phone in the first place, why you didn't reply to my messages immediately, and now I want you to be here at my home. And then the patient had to, follow her instructions and to go to her house at that time. So such things used to happen, and this used to happen repeatedly, like, and patient also repeatedly refused her for all these things. But whenever she would refuse, then what would happen is that this lady would try to blackmail her. She would try to threaten her. I will tell everybody, and that is why you are supposed to come. So patient also would get scared, and she would go there. But patient has told in the interview repeatedly, like, that she felt very dirty and very toxic about the whole thing, whatever was this lady was doing. So but still, what was characteristic in this case was that still this patient, she yielded to the neighbor's orders like a doll and a puppet. These are again her words. Like, she has used these words of a doll and a puppet also. And she said, Ki, doctor, I couldn't even share this with anyone, with that fear and the scare. She could not share even with her family. And because like she could not share, she suffered a lot of panic attacks. She felt ki as if मैं सांस नहीं ले पा रही हूँ, and she used to shiver and tremble. And उसको मतलब बहुत बार hospitalize करना पड़ा for all these reasons. She was also like under the treatment of the psychiatrist, but like, she did not share her stresses and her difficulties even with the psychiatrist. So psychiatrist also did not know what was going wrong. They thought maybe there is something in the college, but it was not so. And whatever this lady was abusing her, and the lady was, putting force on this patient, that this patient never talked to the psychiatrist. So finally, one day, like, it happened that the patient was literally fed up with this. This whole thing continued for nearly 1 year. And then when the limitation, she reached the height of her limitation, that time then she decided, okay, now I will talk to my sister and tell my mother, let whatever happen. And she shared it with her sister and mother. So her mother was a very wise lady, and she tried to, listen to the patient. She understood her. She accepted also that the patient's problems and her mistake. And she handled the whole situation also very wisely. So the mother tried to, she thought of talking out with the neighbor lady. So she called that neighbor. But this neighbor lady, like, she was literally like, she just denied that any role that she had, and whatever this patient is saying is all lies. So she put all the blame onto the patient, and that too, like, वहां पे भी उसने गालियां देना चालू कर दिया. So that was the time, this patient also got so angry that, she hit her there itself in front of her mother and sister. And then mother, like, calmed them down and then handled the situation. तो जो पेशेंट के फादर थे, he was also like, very angry, and he thought ki like, how come this neighbor are, trying to take advantage of my daughter, and how are they exploiting my daughter, so let me do a police complaint. So he to literally declared only, father, I'm going to do police complaint. But then when the father declared this, na, the patient, like, she refused the father, and patient again went into the panic. She felt ki, if you launch a police complaint, then the whole thing will come into the public, and how will I face people, how will I enter into this building, and how will people look at me, and what will happen? So like, she literally, tried to tell the father ki, no, you please don't do. For that reason, she also tried to, cut her hands, and tried to, meaning commit some suicide. But luckily the things did not happen. Everything was taken care of. because there was a maid at the house and the things, she was taken to the hospital and all. But what I mean to say is that that fear in the patient's mind was so much, that how will I be able to face the society and the people, and how will I live in this building if people come to know? So if you launch a police complaint. So with that, then what happened is that finally the family and the mother took a decision ki, okay, they themselves will leave this building and shift to the other home. So this incident has happened about 3 years, 3-4 years ago. So to understand this patient and prescribe her, like we also needed to understand what is the nature of this patient. So what I found was that patient was a very lean, thin, and very fair and beautiful girl. At the same time, she was very expressive. She was vivacious, she was loquacious, and very smiling face that she used to come every time. She's also very intelligent and she loved the art. And she had got gold medals in the sports in her school times. She was very fastidious and at the same time very responsible. Like she would take up all the responsibility on her own self by, because her mother was doing a job and the mother was the only earning member at that time in the family. But so she would try to help the mother, father, and the sister also, doing all their small and big work. Anything is there, she's there to take up that responsibility and to help her mother and her sister. And she also had, that is why she had that lot of desire to help her mother. Okay, let me start earning and start helping my mother so that, some of her burden can be reduced. And she was very much attached to her family. She loves and cares for her family a lot. At the same time, she was very sensitive to the quarrel between the parents. But still, she would help her father. Sometimes she used to get angry on her father, but then she used to say, ki finally, wo father hi hai na, so then she used to help him also. But she had this in her nature, that she would give in to the demands and the desires. Agar koi kuch bolega to kabhi na nahi bolegi, and she would really just try to do those things. So when I tried to understand this patient and tried to analyze her, what I felt ki the incidents that has happened in her life is around say 3-4 years ago. So still, why is the patient suffering? Now the things are fine enough. Now she has shifted to some other home. Now that neighbor couple is not staying next to them. Still, why the patient is suffering? But what I found and what I understood, from it was ki this patient is a very sensitive patient, and at the same time she's very conscientious. And what was happening was like that guilt that she was passing through was something which was not making her peaceful. So she, because in the interview also, she said continuously that it was my mistake, it was my biggest mistake of life, that why did I finally, she repeatedly refused, but once finally, why did I agree and to that lady and her wishes. So she was continuously saying that. So I felt that she was quite conscientious also, and she felt that guilt, that why did I lose that control over my own self. So that is how she was unforgiving to her own self. And she felt that the one mistake, doctor, that I did, and I was trapped, and she became the prey. That is what, what the analysis was coming in our mind when we try to understand that this patient, she became the prey to this neighbor lady's wishes, and she became the victim, and that is why she was abused and she was exploited by that neighbor lady. Because even though she repeatedly, whenever she refused, that time the neighbor had threatened her to expose. And to be in the family or into the society and in the group was this patient's need. So she feared the rejection, she feared forsaken, कि मैं कहीं अकेली हो जाऊंगी या क्या हो जाएगा, meaning I will not be able to take it up. She feared being looked down upon by the people living in the society, in the building, if they come to know about her. So how will the society look at me? That was her fear. And so she just helplessly yielded to whatever was going on. And if we understand the reaction of this patient, then she was feeling angry onto that lady, but she just suppressed it. She never expressed those fears. It was only when, that lady abused her in front of her mother and sister, that was the only time, she literally could not control her anger, and she like literally reverted back by hitting that lady. Otherwise, she throughout the year, like she went on just suppressing her anger. And the most pathological thing which I found in this case was that she yielded to this neighbors, that malice and the pervert wishes, which I really felt key for, meaning how much there is a limit to yield to somebody. But this patient went on yielding continuously for 1 year without, meaning expressing, without sharing, without taking any help from her family also. And finally, like, she was blaming her own self, and she suffered those panic attacks where she felt that मैं सांस नहीं ले पा रही हूँ, and she was feeling that fear of, getting suffocated. And she suffered the sleeplessness, and which she's suffering till today, like, the sleeplessness, the migrainous headaches, the bloating, gas, and the constipation. So these were the expressions which we could see in the patient. So when I tried to, meaning, completed my case, trying to talk to her, the first thing, meaning, which came to my mind was ki, what I said was ki how much, one person can yield, to what extent. And that time in our Gujarati, we have one saying, Dikri ne gaye, dore tyan jaye. And that came in my mind, So today also in our society, if a girl is getting married, तो जब भी वो गर्ल का कन्यादान होता है, वो टाइम पे मतलब देयर इज अ रिचुअल कि वो गर्ल के जो पेरेंट्स है वो कन्यादान करते वक्त एक ऐसे छोटी सी गाय, एक सिंबॉलिकली वो भी वो जो बॉयज की जो फैमिली है उनको वो देते हैं. एंड लाइक व्हाट इज सेड इज कि अवर मीनिंग व्हाट इज कन्वेड इज कि अवर डॉटर इज ऑल्सो लाइक अ गाय, and she is pure. At the same time, she will be mild and submissive, and उसको जैसे भी direct करोगे, she will, like, follow those things. So that is what came in my mind, कि this sentence came to my mind. And then if we understand even what is written in the Lac Defloratum is कि patient is very loquacious, vivacious, and expressive. The Dr. Shankaran sir says that they are very attractive and their talks can be animated. The word which he is using is it can be animated. To that extent, they are expressive. Lac Deflo patients are mild, docile, and submissive. They will not resist and oppose anything, nor will they exercise their own will. They are susceptible to being led and directed. They are capable of being flexed, bent, and twisted. Lac Deflo has need to belong to family, society, and group. They feel safe and secure in the group. So I tried to refer to the Lac Deflo, and when I saw this, I felt that, oh, this is matching very much with my patient. And what I felt ki, okay, if we see the from the kingdom and the themes also, then in our patient, the issue was of me versus you, the me versus that neighbor lady. We saw the complexity of the emotions in the case, the patient's expressions, gestures, her language, like, in the case also, she said about ki, I was used like a doll and a puppet, or like, she felt, use the words like it was very dirty and the toxic, and the way she was used and she felt being exploited. With this, like, I thought ki, okay, this king, meaning the patient somewhere belongs to the animal kingdom. These are the expressions of the animal kingdom. At the same time, what I felt, the themes which were coming up in the case were of abused, victimized, and exploited, the prey and the victim. The patient had become the prey of that lady. And what she was passing and what she was feeling was she was feeling very dirty and the disgust. And she was feeling bad about her own self, about losing her own control. And this is what was, pointing me towards the mammals and the lac remedies. So now I thought of I need a remedy which is of a which is of a animal kingdom, which belongs to the Lac remedies or a mammal remedies, but the remedy has to have the abused, victimized, and exploited feel. The reaction in this remedy has to be yielding, because I found it very pathological. And the need of this remedy or this patient has to be like, that she wants to live in the group, family, and society. Also, I felt the fear that this patient was facing was rejection and forsaken. The family, she was she must have that, the attachment towards the family, love, care, and concern for her family. And by nature, she has to be mild, submissive, and docile. At the same time, the feeling that I got was of a very loving and pure, intelligent, and a very friendly type of person. So whatever was coming up in my mind, about that feel of being like, ki dikri ne gaye do rehte hain jai. So that picture of cow was already coming into my mind and in front of me. At the same time, when I tried to understand ki I need to, when I want to prescribe, I need all this information. All these are the aspects which must be covered up in my remedy. So that is what I felt was very much matching with the Lac Defloratum. And the feel was like, whenever I have spoken and I have interacted with this patient, I have never felt that, she is manipulating anything or she has any malice in her mind. So like when that much of yielding, which was pathological to that extent, was coming in our mind, so the remedies like Pulsatilla ignatia would come into your mind, but they are the remedies of the plant kingdom, and they would never have this type of issues of the abuse, victimized, or exploitations. So that is why I thought about all this. At the same time, the purity I felt, we know that the cow is a symbol of very, very pure purity, and that is why the cows milk, cows ghee, cows, like is used so much even in all this, like medically also, especially into the Ayurveda, and has given a lot of importance into the religious as well as in the Ayurveda. So I got with that feel, I thought of, I came down to Lac Defloratum. Few rubrics that were coming into my mind was like, the abuse, aggravation, ailments from yielding disposition, children in fear of rejection, fear of suffocation, and death thoughts of. So with that, I prescribed her Lac Defloratum 33 doses weekly. And friends, within no time, less than say 1 month of the time, there was a lot of improvement into the patient. That all her complaints started reducing. And then over a period of time, say in about 5-6 months time, all her complaints completely disappeared. Like, her migraines, headaches were completely better. Her allergic rhinitis was better. She was sleeping very fine, and she would describe that it was a very deep and sound sleep. वो बोलती थी कि अगर बाजू में कहीं पे भी वो म्यूजिक बजता है जोर जोर से, अगर कुछ ढोल बजेगा ना, तो भी मैं अच्छे से सोती हूँ, एंड माय स्लीप विल नॉट गेट डिस्टर्ब. Her bloating and her of abdomen, gas, and constipation was also better completely. She could eat everything, and she was so happy that even if she ate non-veg, it did not give her any problem into her digestion and her and it was all fine. So her appetite also had improved. She was eating lots and she was enjoying eating. So mentally also she was very peaceful. Her energy levels were very good. Her confidence has increased in her own self. She started learning some craft which she wanted to. She could do that, some creative work she started. At the same time, she started taking the orders of that creative work which she was doing online on a digital platform, and she started earning also. So that is how again she was feeling very good for her own self. So friends, this is what is my case and my understanding of Lac Defloratum. Now, as Dr. Anita said, in the starting only, that if we have the cases, like every remedy has different facets. So my case, this patient is just 21-year-old. So at the same time now, Dr. Kushala is going to share another case of Lac Defloratum, which is a case of an elderly lady. So when we try to understand both this, we will be able to understand the different facets of the remedy. So with that, I will like to invite Dr. Kushala Salian to share her case. Yes, Kushala.
Yeah, thank you, Shobha. Very well presented. So, hello, friends. So, this lady, 66, came to me in 2022. It's a small family, husband, daughter, and her old mother in law was staying with them. So, she said that she's to get a lot of vertigo, and this is going on since 11 years. She also has cervical spondylosis, and that was the cause of the vertigo. Every time she turned on the bed or she was stressed, she would land in vertigo. So I asked her, what was your stress? So she said, I had fear of future. I said, what is that? She said, my mother was very critical and I was alone. She was on oxygen and even my siblings were not cooperative. So I had to look after her and I could not even get up because of vertigo. It was so tensive and critical situation at home in those days. Another problem in those time was that she was a branch manager in a bank and they had planned to transfer her. So she had that fear continuous as her kid, her daughter was in 12th. She had that fear that if they send me to her further far away branch, how will I support my daughter in her education? And at the same time, her mother-in-law was detected with CA in the uterus. And she was very bad. She was in a bad shape. The doctor had advised surgery. So they were in two minds whether to do or not. And at the same time, she was living with them, and none of the, siblings of her husband were supporting them. So these were some of her tensive issues. And there was also a lot of property dispute in the family, which was going on among the siblings. And they were abusing her for the property issues because they wanted all the property. And since they were more well off than her, she said that we were looked down as scrap. But what bothered them is gradually we came up, even the scrap came up. They were high and mighty. It was difficult to retaliate because they were so strong. I tend to buckle a lot. In the early years of her marriage, they were staying far off, and she was not conceiving. Though her brother insisted that you will stay with mother, and mummy will help you. So that way, when she shifted with mother, she conceived. And her children were, her daughter was nice and plumpy, but the sister-in-law's children were very thin. And gradually, they were able to buy a nice flat in the suburbs. So nobody expected that these people who were not doing so well, have not only purchased a nice flat, but they're doing very good for themselves. So they looked down upon us. There was a strong jealousy because of the children. She was working in a branch and she was a good worker. She worked for 40 years and the branch manager and the customers all appreciated her. She had a good bonding with the customers and even the management and the colleagues were very helpful to her. She said, I don't enter into any arguments. My bonding is good. By nature, she said, if someone hurts me, I don't forget. But she's the type who cannot respond. If somebody, is abusing her and telling her things, she can cut off from that person totally. But what happens to her physically is she gets breathless, her voice falters, but she can't give back. She's not able to talk. Her voice doesn't come out. It's anger at that moment, then anxiety. At the same time, she sees lots of dreams, premonition dreams. Like in her dream, she'll see death of somebody. And actually, next day, there would be a news that so-and-so in the neighborhood died. And then it comes true. So I, seeing the experience of the mother-in-law and the way the siblings were treated her, she felt that I don't want to be dependent in my old age. I want to look out for a good old age home for myself and my husband, because I know I can see what old people will face in future. I have seen that my mother-in-law was not looked after. I fear that my children, I don't want to put my children in a bad shape. I fear that, my children will not be available for us in the future. Some of the physicals that were there in her was she had grade 1 fatty liver, she had cysts in both her breasts, there were fibroids in her uterus, endometriosis, heavy bleeding. She had bloating, gas, which used to get worse with milk, lot of perspiration on her face, head, and it used to drip. So here also, I saw a lot of me versus them, me versus sister, sister-in-law, me versus siblings, lot of comparison, my daughter plump, their children thin, we are, they are high mighty, we are scrap. So a lot of comparison in the case, a lot of issues of jealousy, nurturing. I mean, she's looking after mother, mother-in-law, she's, looking after children and her siblings, but nobody is looking after her when she needs them. There's victim aggressor, there's competition. I could buy a house in suburb. I mean, it's expensive. They were staying somewhere very, very far. So that aspect, if they are living in suburb when I bought a house, I could settle children and I can manage my finance better than them. So these themes came down to animal kingdom. So I said, let me see what are the prominent themes in this case. One theme was there was a definite need to belong to a family, a strong family feeling. There's an intense need for family, friends, community. And there's a conflict in her to be dependent or independent. There's a sacrifice for the group. She did a lot for her family. And there was a conflict of giving and receiving. I'm giving, but I'm not receiving. There's a strong maternal instinct. You can see so much of caring, nurturing, strong bond between the mother and the child. There's so much of love and relationship issues. She used to help members of her family and friends. She used to do good things for them. So you could see that even her colleagues and the management were good with her because she also was a helpful person. And being abandoned and forsaken by the family, being neglected by the family. There's an issue of hierarchy, superior, inferior, scrap, high, mighty, history of abuse and exploitation. There's a lot of anger against authority. There was a lot of sense of injustice that I need to stand and fight for my rights. Feeling suppressed, feeling of no importance, but yet she didn't have the voice to retaliate. And then in her disposition, there was mild and yielding, and there was a lot of premonition. So definitely with so much of nurturing and maternal instinct, a mammal comes into the picture. But it's not an aggressor, it's a prey. And it has to be a mammal with a lot of nurturing, that is in the nourishment line. So I said, Bovidae comes very much in the picture. So what are these Bovidaes, the cattle family? They're very mild, timid, calm, quiet, simple. They're less communicative. They are aloof from others. They're workaholic. They do a lot of work and they desire routine, harmonious work. They never complain. They never demand. They just keep doing their work. They avoid quarrels and arguments. They are not ambitious. They don't take up big challenges in life, but they have a lot of capacity and endurance and strength to work. They're very docile. They're submissive. They're gentle. And that's the reason that people abuse them. They're taken for granted and they're treated so badly. And they are unable to express that no voice is so prominent in her case and even in Dr. Shobha's case. There's so much of pent-up emotions. So some of the prominent rubrics which came up was abuse ailments from anxiety of future, death presentiment of, delusion despised is, delusion neglected he or she is. Fear happens something will, forsaken feeling, mildness, talking ameliorates, yielding, vertigo turning in bed, aggravates, perspiration profuse, generalities, food and drinks, milk aggravates. In physicals also, aggravated milk, vertigo turning in bed, mammasis, perspiration profuse, menses heavy. So I came on my repertory sheet, it was Lac Defloratum, which came up and I gave her 201 powder. So what are some of the rubrics of Lac Defloratum, which are very prominent. In some of the rubrics, like you have a very prominent rubric, maternal instinct exaggerated. You have so much of mothering in you that you would look after the entire family. Another theme which comes up is helping. Dreams, he carried a crippled man on his back. That's the rubric. Dreams, efforts to help out family and community. You see that in the case. There is a theme of love, care, nourishment, because it's a maternal remedy. It's a remedy of nurture. So you see a rubric, dreams being cared for by his mother. They are docile, submissive. They are taken for granted. They are neglected. So some of the rubrics which fall in this theme are yielding, forsaken feeling, dreams of being neglected. This is a lot of theme of adoption, dreams of adoption, dreams of adopting injured dog. There's abuse and exploitation. I mean, the amount of exploitation that if you read some of the things that come, in the Google or in the newspapers, the way these animals, the cows especially, are exploited for their milk, the way they are beaten up, the way they are separated from their calf so that the milk can be used for dairy purpose is tremendous. I mean, you can't bear to read it. Dreams alone and helpless of being. Dreams, anger at being shouted at, taunted and abused. Dreams of animals tied and beaten with sticks. There's a strong sense of injustice. I mean, you are nourishment, nurturing others, and people are beating you. So there's anger against authority. There's so much of fear and helplessness because you're so submissive. Helplessness feels like an infant. I mean, you're so weak, you're so helpless. An infant is dependent, you're so helpless. Delusion, she'll have to go to a convent where she'll be alone and helpless. Sadness, when they go through all this, what remains is sadness. And then they are, they desire death and suicide. So some of the rubrics that come in is sadness, conversation during, they're weary of life. And they desire death. They think of suicide or they think of death and meditate on the best way of self-destruction. You can see the sadness, the tears in the eyes of the cow in the picture. There's a lot of theme of dirtiness, which has a rubric, dreams, child dirty. And they're professing, death presentiment of, professing, predicts the time of death. So these are some of the rubrics. There are few, there are many, many, many more, which you all can, study through various books. And this was my presentation. I would like to invite Anita to share her views.
Very nice, Shobha and Kushala, you have presented beautifully, and it is covering all the shades of Lac Defloratum. So Lac Defloratum is a very, giver, generous. It has a lot of abundance. So we say Kamdhenu. In our scriptures, there is a cow, which is Kamdhenu, which fulfills all your wishes. So right from milk to skin to the hoops, everything is used of cows. And when they are not useful, then they are sent to slaughterhouses. So the type of abuse or exploitation of cows is so prominent. So a lot of, domestic abuse cases where patient cannot voice out. For a major part of their life, they can't voice out, though in the end, they may, because they can't support injustice and also they go against authority. So that being huge mammal, that little bit of strength will come. And with scene changing, like domestic abuse cases are reducing, at least in metro cities, but you will find a lot of sexual abuse cases. So be alert, like what Shobha also described, from being trapped, being yielding, being too naive. You are always at risk of getting exploited. So in abuse cases, always look for this type of remedies. And we have, already presented Lac Asinum and Equinum from Equidae family. They are also abused, and these Bovidaes are also abused. But here, like Kushala said, nutrition line. So nurture is very important because milk is most useful, and it is, it was considered as the best nutrition, but now they are discovering that it is a lot of allergy producing also. But still, cow is always considered as holy giver, and we also call it Gau Mata. So that maternal instinct exaggerated is also there, which differentiates it from animals of labor, that is horse and donkey, or Lac Asinum and Lac Equinum. So with this, we conclude our session. And one more reminder again, that first go to animal theme, then lac theme, and then go to the remedy, and don't go for superficial collaboration like this person looks like a goat, it has a goatee, so we can give, lac caprinum. So please study in depth, take cases in depth, and prescribe very nicely and accurately. Do watch, subscribe to our channels, and give us your comments on YouTube so that we can make some improvements, or we can address to all the queries. Thank you. You want to add anything?
No, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.